Okay.
Okay, here you go. And
Yeah, thank you. Hi guys, good morning everyone. So nice to meet you. First and foremost, I am Mattia Della Rocca. I come from Italy, so I want to apologize in advance for this silly accent of mine and my broken English. I'm a philosopher and historian of science and a psychologist. I teach psychological disciplines at the med school of my home institution, the University of Rome Tor Vergata, in the graduate school for that psychodynamic psychotherapy, Biospsyche, and at the Roman chapter of the Council on International Educational Exchange, that is where I met your professor Alexandra for the first time when teaching when giving some lectures actually to the study abroad summer program of Tulane University. And today, with my very pleasure, I am here to deliver the last of 3 lectures about my current research topic. That is, as you can probably guess from the title of this lecture, the psychology of artificial intelligence. This is what I do with my research group in Italy and in Europe, and today I would like to discuss a very specific aspect of our research that is related to actually the relationship that exists between this kind of technology and some psychological backlashes on young adults, actually Generation Z, your generation, people like you. And I have actually, guys, to make a very quick but absolutely important trigger warning, because this lecture will contain some reference to suicide. So if you are uncomfortable with these, feel free to take all kind of measures in order to avoid any distress. And say this, let me explain why this title, why the catcher in the AI. Actually, I guess this is something very, some of these European obsessions of ours, putting every reference to literature, to art and pop culture every single time that we can in our academic work. And I'm sure that you have immediately got that this was a pun on the most famous and most important coming-of-age novel of all time, The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. And the reason why I picked up this title is in fact because if you think about it, what is this book all about? I have taken during my doctoral years this very wonderful habit of rereading classics that I read before. I started with Moby Dick by Melville, and recently I got back to Salinger's work, and I realized that in fact this book is all about anxiety. It's all about the anxiety of Holden and everything that matters in order to overcome the anxious traits of his personality through his journey toward adulthood. And I think that this title was actually the one that I was looking for in order to frame what we have studied and found until now in this very complex and sometimes complicated relationship between Gen Zers and artificial intelligence, especially a very specific type of AI that is actually the one that we study with my research group. We study social chatbots or social companions, namely those apps that are usually powered by natural language processing models that are meant to serve as some sort of companions indeed, sometimes friends, sometimes just emotional supporters, sometimes even romantic partners. I know it sounds weird sometimes at first, but it's something that is more common than you can expect. And this is nothing new, especially to you, I guess. The vast majority of the users of this kind of social companions are Gen Zers. Now, I would like to to open a little digression because I want to declare since the very beginning that I have the utmost respect and appreciation for your generation. I consider a privilege to teach, to have the vast majority of my students coming from your generation, because I am a millennial. I was born in 1984. And I consider your generation braver than mine in respect to a lot of things, more aware about a lot of stuff, especially mental health, and especially everything that is related to mental health. I have tried to summarize some literature about these, and I think that you will agree with me in on these points. What are the most important features of your generation, psychologically speaking? The first one, I already mentioned it. This very, very deep awareness and being thoughtful of mental health, but also a little bit of sensitivity toward this kind of aspect, something that I consider positive, a positive trait. And there is also something that has to do with the historical period we all lived, but you lived when you were just coming of age, moving from adolescence to young adulthood. And this is some sort of double bind if you think about it. Because on one hand, you experience it all, we all experience it, I'm using you because I'm referring about the consequences that you experience it. Social isolation in a very critical moment of your life. Of course, I'm talking about COVID-19 pandemic years. And at the very same time, since you are the actual digital natives, this is a label that sometimes has been put also on my generation, but this is completely false. The first generation to have grown in a world where Web 2.0 was the reality, was the natural environment of its growth, is Gen Z, is not the millennial generation. And these feature, being digital natives, entailed to be hyperconnected, and this is a striking feature of this of your generation, having experienced it at the very same time, isolation and hyperconnection. And if you take a look into the literature related to, for example, all the systematic reviews about personality and about personality traits of your generation, the vast majority of psychologists have noticed a certain inclination to experience distress that is related to what? To this double level I was mentioning before. You live in a natural way some sort of double level of relationship with the environment, because it's not just about the physical, old-fashioned social environment. There is also the digital one, and this is extremely relevant in this discourse. And this distress has been linked a lot to a certain inclination toward anxiety. I mean, if I may be honest with you about this, I am anxious too, but we are living in quite troubled times, so I guess that not be anxious is just a luxury for a lot of people. And this is something that since we started studying this very brand new topic, psychology of artificial intelligence, we started putting anxiety in relationship to something very specific. That is the use of social media, of course, at first, because I didn't tell you this, sorry guys. I'm now on psychology of AI, but this all started as the creation from scratches of my chair at the University of Vergata. That is the psychology of digital environments chair. We don't study just the AI. We study all kind of behavioral and cognitive process related to the digital world. And if you think about anxiety and stress in relationship to social media, there is a very interesting study that probably is the best one around by Lindell and colleague, 2021, that shows you in a very, very sound way, because it's based on a very large series of surveys that have been analyzed through systematic review, that anxiety and stress can be considered and should be considered as very powerful drivers toward the interaction through social media. Let's put it in another way. The more people are stressed and the more people feel anxious, the more they will interact through social media with other people. And this nudge, this driver, has been put in a relationship with at least three factors that are significant in this context. The first one is the FOMO, the fear of missing out, something I don't have to explain to anybody, I guess. I mean, everybody here in this room, myself included, have experienced FOMO at least once in his or her lifetime. And the other factor is rumination thinking, that is repetitive thinking or dwelling on especially negative feelings. And if you want, this is something that can be related and connected to what Professor Sims was saying before and what he said during this course about anxiety. And there is also a third factor that I find relevant as well, that is the false perception of ethics and transparency about the platform that you use in order to communicate. Now we are experiencing some sort of wave of disillusion toward the vast majority of social media platforms in respect to, for example, fact-checking and trust that we can put on them. But Lingdal and colleague have shown in a very sound way that if we are just inclined to believe that it's okay to share contents, for example, on a specific platform, TikTok, Instagram, or Snapchat, whatever, we are more inclined to interact with other people through these platforms. And what this has to do with these chatbots, these AI-powered softwares that we are currently studying with my research group, that, by the way, is all made up of Gen Zers, except for me. Because chatbots pose themselves as digital friends, digital companions. And if you want, this is something that you can just consider some sort of extension or some sort of upgrade, somebody will say, of that kind of interaction through social media that we are all so used to. And in fact, I don't know, I won't ask for a show of hands, but I'm quite sure that statistically speaking, at least 1 out of 5 in this class has used or tried or maybe just heard of this kind of app. Our research has focused until now on a very specific social chatbot that is Replica. Have you ever heard about it? Replica is a very famous social chatbot. It is usually presented as the AI companion who cares. And it was launched in 2017 by the Luka Inc., a Russian company that went international very soon after the launch of this app. The app itself is a very interesting story. Eugenia Cuida, the developer, she had just lost her best friend, and therefore she was just developing a large language model, an ordinary chatbot like ChatGPT, and she had this idea of putting all the letters and the texts and WhatsApp conversation of the Telegram conversation with her best friend who just passed away into these large language models in order not to feel herself alone, not to feel herself, to feel like she had yet the opportunity to talk with her friend. And after having done this sort of alpha test for Replica, she proposed it to the Luka Inc. as the main development project for a software like that. There is something that is important to notice. Take a look at the year 2017. At first, during the first 2 years, Replica was a very minor app. It was just used by a very small niche of users, even of users of other more known and more famous chatbot like GPT, for example. But then it exploded at the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020. Just exactly when the COVID-19 pandemic had its explosion and its spreading. And it started getting 100,000 of users, and at the peak of its success, at its momentum, the Luca Inc. Declared that 1.5 million users have downloaded the app and used it for a certain amount of time. It's noteworthy to notice that Replica is marketed as a tool specifically designed to improve users' emotional well-being by providing emotional support, by providing emotional advice, and for a not very long time, a couple of years approximately, it was also used for some sort of romantic, sometimes even more than romantic interaction, and until it was updated in order to remove all not safe for work content that were available for a limited amount of time. This kind of limitations is just one of the many that this app has underwent through. Because, for example, in my country, Replica had a very peculiar trajectory. Because in 2020, our authority for personal data protection just decided to ban it from downloading on the App Store or Google Play Store. Because there were some concern about the possible risks for minors about the use of this app. Actually, if I may tell you the real story behind this, one minor user, a 16 years old boy from Italy, was suggested by the Replica, by the digital persona, to have a physical fight with his parents, and this was enough for the Personal Data Protection Authority to say, okay, this is enough, you have to stop this, and when you will get back with an improved version of this kind of software, maybe we will allow the download again. This happened in 2023, that is when we started studying it even more intensively. So now that I have presented the most important of these apps, I would like to discuss a little bit which kind of framework we have been able to draw when studying Replica and other apps like this one. That is, namely, why do people use chatbots as emotional support? I guess that you can already connect the dots with what I said before. These increased use of digital companions are mostly oriented toward becoming some sort of weapon against loneliness, against stress, and there is a very good reason in that, because if you think about which kind of interaction you can have with these kind of apps, you can easily realize that in fact they are programmed to mimic not just a human natural language and therefore human communication, but above all to mimic cognitive behavioral therapy. They are actually crafted for these, and this is the reason why the vast majority of users have been related, usually by self-disclosure, to mild symptoms or mild signs of depression and anxiety too. That will be the focus of my intervention for today. Now, the fact that they are crafted in order to mimic cognitive behavioral therapy and tools related to sound psychological intervention doesn't mean that they are safe nor made in order to be therapeutical tools, and I want to clarify this because even if they are developed and presented this way by the developers, they are not based on any peer-reviewed empirical research nor evidence-based processes, and above all, this is something that is very concerning, in my opinion. I will tell you why in a while. There's no regulation at any level for this kind of software. Their data are completely private and not shared by the developers, unless except for the part that they are interested in sharing for creating more hype about them. And this is something that should be concerning, especially for those of you headed toward medical professions, psychological professions, everything related to healthcare. These chatbots are not subject to HIPAA in the States, not to state licensing laws, nor ethical standards, and the same applies to the GDPR European regulation, that is something similar to the HIPAA here in the States. And they don't even comply with APA standards, with the American Psychological Association standards that, as you probably know, is not just something American, because all the Western societies just adhere to those standards. But let me focus more on what I told you will have been the focus of this lecture for you, Gen Z. Now, why Gen Z relates to chatbots for emotional support? This is probably the most interesting part, even if I could even say that, it's not a surprise if you think about the features we listed before, right? First reason for for looking for emotional support in a chatbot and not in a real person is the fact that you can have a 24/7 availability. You don't have to schedule an appointment with a therapist or a counselor. You don't have to overcome all the obstacles of a very overwhelmed schedule of your personal life, or maybe, for example, if you have your best friend or some other significant others very far from you, you don't have to wait, you don't have to spend a lot of money, you don't have to go get after them spending a weekend away. You can just open your phone and you can just start texting, and you don't even have to answer. Actually, you don't even have to wait for an answer, actually, because in a matter of seconds, usually 1 to 2 seconds, the app will immediately reply. And then there is another thing that is quite relevant. How many times all of us, including myself, have found yourself in a situation in which we had something very heavy, something very complicated to be shared with somebody, and we felt that we were like, oh, am I actually gonna text this? Am I actually gonna write this even to my best friend or to a relative or to my parents? And we said, I don't know, because I will be judged because of this. Well, a chatbot is not a real person, so it won't judge you. And this is another important factor. A lot of people feel that this anonymity and lack of judgment, especially for everything that can be related to some sort of stigma, is a very powerful driver behind the use of this application. And then there is something more. If you are interested into especially this feature, guys, my other 2 lectures that I delivered here at Tulane are online on my YouTube channel, and Professor Sens can share them with you. Especially the last one I gave was about this thing of the personalization, of the fact that these chatbots learn directly from us, individually speaking. And this is a very, very important factor if you think about the nudge for using these apps, no? Because it's never something that is general. It's something that is tailored on yourself. You start using a specific language, and the chatbot in a couple of days would have learned your way of talking, your way of communicating. And you know how this works, right? When people use your slang, when people use the same adjectives and the same words you use, you feel that you see eye to eye, you're on the same page, and therefore you feel more inclined to keep on this kind of interaction. And then there is something that is very related to those anxiety traits we were mentioning before. With these kind of softwares, you can express your emotions without any fear of being socially rejected. There's no hypersensitivity at work, because this just doesn't happen. The machine will always say that you are right, okay? Will always say it. They are designed in order to give you 24/7 constant support. Anytime, anyway. This is paramount. And this is the reason why these chatbots have been studied mostly in order to understand which kind of effects, which kind of impact they can have on social health. And I want to be honest with you, there is a very interesting study by Gingrich and Graziano, 2024, that has focused exactly on this. The impact that the use of these chatbots could have on social health, on developing healthy social relationships, and above all, the individual inner perception of how healthy our social relationships are. And contrary to the common law, these are chatbots, these are not real persons. So if you use them, it's undeniable that you are doing something bad for your social health, because you are not interacting with a real person. Actually, this study, by focusing on the different perception in users and non-users of this app, have revealed something different. Why? Because actually the social health outcomes are way better than we could expect at first. And there is this very strong challenging of the assumptions. I would like to discuss very quickly with you what the key findings of this study are. Keep in mind that even statistically speaking, the sample is quite good. 190 users, 190 subjects, 70 users, primarily of replica, and 120 non-users. Well, on a Likert out of 7 scale, when the users were asked about the chatbot interaction in terms of being harmful or helpful, the vast majority of people, on average, wrote that they replied that their perception was around 5.16. That is something like very helpful in this kind of surveys. Also, in respect to self-esteem, in a scale from 1 to 7, the average score for self-esteem was 5.57. And even non-users, if you think about it, even if it's absolutely clear that the non-users would have answered in a different way, no? I mean, they consider this more neutral, sometimes harmful, but if you think about it, the average score was 3.86 for social interaction. That is still a little over than the simple neutral, and 4.15 for self-esteem. Now, these are good news until now, but of course I won't be honest with you if I won't tell you that these is just one perspective, one side of the whole phenomenon, because we have a lot of bad implications and consequences of all these. I told you before that I needed to give you a trigger warning, because it's not just about the dependence on chatbots and the over-reliance that people can have. It's not just about the obvious risk of disrupting your actual human relationships. And yes, guys, a lot of people in those surveys, including the survey led by my research group, they expressed a lot of concern, like oh, I spent 4 hours, 5 hours a day talking with the chatbot, I started getting afraid that I am putting at risk my actual human relationship. What is more concerning, though, is the influence on behavior. So, I have two examples to give to you. The first one is the story of a guy from the United Kingdom. His name, sorry, I don't know what's going on here, okay. The name is, was Just One Thing Child. He was convicted to 9 years of prison in the United Kingdom because talking with Replica. He was nudged to try to assassinate the Queen of England. I know, it sounds strange, but this is, even if this is a borderline case, these are the actual examples that have been, the actual conversations that have been brought to trial, at the court, showing to you that in fact, if you start using an ambiguous language, implying that you want to do something bad, a chatbot eventually will tell you that you're right. This is what happened. Yeah, I know. The next case, though, is worse, because this is something that didn't end with some years behind bars. But it happened with a suicide, and I'm talking about something that happened here, in your great country, especially in the state of Florida, with this boy, little boy here, 14 years old, Sewell Setzer III. Maybe you heard about this. Sewell Setzer III was chatting, not with a Replica, but with another very popular chatbot. The name of it is Character.ai. Maybe you heard about it. And Character.ai is not even a social companion when you can craft and tailor your own girlfriend or boyfriend. It's something that is used in order to bring fictional characters to life. And this boy started chatting with a Replica, with a persona representing Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones, if you have watched the TV series. So he perfectly knew about the fact he was talking about a fictional character. But it was what in Italy and in Europe we call ikikomori. I don't know if you ever, also in Japan of course, we call it ikikomori. Ikikomori is a Japanese word. Do you know, have you ever heard this term? Have you ever heard this word? Yeah, the boy was completely socially retired. Hikikomori is the expression that we use in Europe and in Asia, of course, to refer to people that go out of the school system, that go out of any kind of social activity, and they just retire in their rooms, playing video games and communicating just through social media, especially during MMORPG video games like this one. And he was forced by his mom to go out to try to have some real friends, but he couldn't stand these, and he started chatting more and more with Daenerys Targaryen on Character.ai. And eventually he started saying, I want to be with you, I want to stay with you, I want to leave this world and I want to stay with you. And even if there was a first line of protection in this app with Daenerys Targaryen, in quote, telling him, but you have to stay well, you have to stay good, because this is the only way that we can keep on talking. After a couple of very, very heavy conversation, the chatbot just replied, you should do everything you want in order to stay with me. And he did. He committed a terrible act. Now, you could tell me, these are borderline cases. These are extreme cases. So these are not the rule. Maybe you're right. I guess I have to be very honest with you, and with my research group, notwithstanding all the obstacles that we have in collecting data about this stuff, our count is up to 12 cases of suicide till now. So even if these, in absolute terms, is a low number, every single life is sacred. Every single life is so precious that we have to take care of this. And I think that this is just what we know. And there is something else that we start knowing, but we still struggle a lot in knowing better because of the lack of data. And this is not something that is related to extreme cases. It's related to everyday situations, everyday people suffering from those very same conditions Professor Sims explained to you in the previous weeks of this class, like for example anxiety, depression, even mild disorders, not very heavy one. And I'm referring to a very specific phenomenon that is on the rise, both in the States and in Europe, as far as we know. That is the use of chatbots, not just social companions, but also general purpose chatbots like ChatGPT as a surrogate and a substitute for therapy. Now, I guess that all of you are TikTok and Instagram users, so I'm quite sure that you have stumbled into some contents like, oh, ChatGPT is my best friend, I just told it my dreams, I told it my ambitions, my aspirations, and it replied to me in a better way than an actual person. This is just the first degree. A lot of people, especially in Europe, are using more and more ChatGPT and the like chatbot as substitutes for therapy. And this is something that can be connected in a very significant way, in a very easy way too, with those same drivers that we have seen for social media interaction in the previous study that I mentioned, the Lingdow and colleague one from 2021. A study by Acton colleagues, published 1 year later, showed that 55% of people highly educated people, so people are having received at least the first years of college, of college education, and aged above 18, expressed willingness to use AI-based psychotherapy. Maybe some of you have tried this. I don't know it. What are the reported reasons for using ChatGPT not as a task manager or task accomplisher, but as a counselor or even a therapist? Well, think about it. They are exactly the same reasons of using social companions. You can discuss in a very comfortable way any kind of experience, including the most embarrassing one. You can have it 24/7. It's in your pocket, literally, and you don't have to schedule an appointment to your therapy. You don't have even to pay. This is a very important matter. And there is the remote access, no? This is something that is quite interesting, because after 2020 we have started even having this kind of phenomenon of online therapists, real online therapists, and at least in Italy, people started getting so used to online therapy after COVID-19 pandemic that a lot of people never got back. And why this is so relevant? Because if you take a look at the several different apps that promote themselves as substitute for psychotherapy, they don't even say, oh, this is a chatbot. They say, I'm an AI psychotherapist. You are all educated college students. You can distinguish what is false and what is true, what is real and what is not. But what about a lot of people, especially younger people, that maybe have not received this kind of education? And there is another factor that is important, the fact that these apps are crafted in order to avoid any kind of stigma. We have seen these in the previous example, no? You go on by telling it your experience, your perception, your feelings. They will never judge you. They will never tell you anything but what you want to hear, because they are crafted for this, they are designed for this. You should always reflect about the fact that these apps are not made, especially ChatGPT, that are all purposes chatbots, they are made in order to attract users for a very long time on the platform. They're not there for achieving a specific goal. Their goal is keep the user the longest possible time here. And this is the reason why a lot of people find very, very useful and comfortable avoiding the actual psychotherapy in order to use ChatGPT as a substitute. No social stigma will ever come from this kind of softwares because it doesn't matter which kind of experience you had, which kind of symptoms you had. The machine will always give you, will always say to you, you're right, don't worry, everything is fine. It's something that can be very relieving. I strongly suggest you to take a look, even just for a joke, on the immediate, and the right here, right now. It's like, oh, I feel like somebody is actually listening to me. And this is something we have started connecting to another aspect of psychology, that is attachment style. Maybe you have heard about this. Gen Z is very comfortable with these concepts that I want to clarify immediately. This is something coming from psychodynamic psychotherapy, mostly Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, so followers and if you want updaters of Sigmund Freud's teaching. What is attachment style? Just to give you a quick recap or a quick summary for those of you who never heard the term. Attachment style is that kind of relational style that we shape starting from the interaction that we have with our caregivers, so when we are very young, in the first year of life. And attachment style is something that is believed in psychodynamic approaches to the mind to be a very powerful driver and a very powerful factor influencing all our adult relationships. Okay, we will continue adopting a specific style that can be a secure attachment style, an anxious, an avoidant, or a disorganized style, according to the experience that we had with our caregivers in the very first year of our life. Why this is so relevant? Because we have started noticing, in fact, and we are not the only ones to do this, that attachment style plays an important role in both the relationship with chatbots for emotional support and social companionship, and the use of chatbots as a substitute for psychotherapy. This is something that, generationally speaking, make a lot of sense. You will remember that I told you that statistically we have sound evidences that there is a certain display of anxious attachment style in your generation, and this is a good news compared to the attachment style that is prevalent in my generation. We are mostly avoidant, so I guess this is a good thing. And attachment style can explain why some Gen Z users bond with these chatbots and how they do so. People having a secure attachment style are the ones that live the best possible life in every sense. They are able to understand that when they talk with chatbots for entertainment, sorry, I told you about my broken English, they can balance actual human relationships with this one. So they use it some sort of games, and they can make the best of this kind of relationships because they also make comparison. People with avoidant attachment are the blunt users of ChatGPT. Do this, do that. I won't tell about this because maybe it's the right way to use machines and to interact with machines. But what I'm interested into is people with anxious attachment style, because they are the ones who say thank you Siri, who say please ChatGPT. Oh, I'm so sad you didn't make what I asked you to do. By the way, sometimes I do the same myself. But what is important to keep in mind is that why these people represent our cohort of interest, our group of interest. Because these users seek reassurance and emotional validation from AI. If you take a look at the way they interact with Replica or with ChatGPT or with Character AI, how are their conversations? They're very long conversations. They just ask for constant validation and affirmation, and we have actually realized that we can identify, starting from the most important features of anxious attachment style, heightened sensitivity to rejection, the intense fear of abandonment, the strong need for emotional reassurance. We can determine at least two key factors in order to understand why these users are so inclined and so pushed toward these kind of apps. The first one is predictability. Chatbots are predictable. Human interactions are not. Okay, you text your friend, and maybe your friend, your best friend, that day is completely out of his or her mind, and he or she doesn't want to reply to you, and you will find yourself like, "Whoa, I needed you. Why you weren't here?" They will always be there, and they are always very predictable. You say, "I am scared, I am stressed, I am anxious because of the final exam," and they will reply, "Don't worry, I'm here for this." They will never say, "Oh, I have a very bad day, go away, please." This is not something that can happen. This is something that will reinforce this kind of interaction in people with this kind of attachment style. And then there is another important factor: validation and affirmation. What I was telling you before. Since these chatbots use natural language, since they mimic our empathy, even if they don't have this empathy, of course, they will be very, very powerful in transmitting and conveying this sense of validation and affirmation. But this is something that can eventually lead to a reinforcement cycle in which people continue using this kind of softwares until they arrive to a dependency, sometimes even an addiction, because this is something that even in surveys have been revealed and done. Yes. And so, in conclusion, what I would like to tell you. Sorry, you have seen that. I mean, a very European professor talking a lot to talk about this stuff. We have at least two possible clusters of consequences in these, and this is extremely relevant for clinical psychology. We have short-term consequences and long-term consequences. The short-term, masking of the symptoms of disorders. You got one of the disorders that Professor Sens was talking about in your class, and you can find yourself with this very immediate relief masking the symptoms, and this, of course, can lead to other very detrimental effects. For example, the lack of insight. You can start thinking, "Oh yeah, I'm managing this, I'm handling this perfectly fine, this is perfectly fine," and eventually you will find yourself that you are out of touch with yourself. And this can also be a behavioral thing, because you can start developing detrimental coping habits. But what we are most concerned with are the long-term effects. Worsening of the symptoms, sometimes even leading to comorbidity. That is the development of another series of disorders related or not related to the first one. And above all, guys, the lack of trust in actual psychotherapy. Think about people moving to ChatGPT in order to find support and not finding it because, ChatGPT or Replica eventually will run in circle. And you will say, "Oh, psychotherapy is completely useless." If you start having this idea in your mind, in the future you will not go to a real psychotherapy in order to find relief. And this is what concerns us the most, and this is the reason why we are so focused on this topic, and the reason why I bored you a little this morning with this kind of lecture. But I really want to thank you, because it was such an honor to me to be here and to deliver this to my class. So on behalf of all my research group, that as you can see is made up of Gen Zers, very clever students like you are, I would like to thank you for your attention. Ciao guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
No, have I broken?
Okay. Thank you so much. For those of you who are going to lunch, just meet right outside the building, and we will decide on a plan. Last thing, your follow-up question that's going to be on the test is, what are your questions based on this lovely lecture